I'm Hannah Soukup. I am an archives intern at the Montana Historical Society's Research Center, and I am an oral historian and an archivist, and I've had the pleasure of processing 3 collections of papers from 3 different women in Montana, all of whom served as Constitutional Convention delegates in 1972, and 2 of them went on to serve in the state legislature. Archival collections from anyone are really important because they give you a glimpse into that particular person's thought process and their life. They also help you understand the historical relevance and context of a particular time period or a particular event. In this case, it's the Con-Con. The other thing that I think is really important about collections of materials from politicians or people who worked in government is that it helps people better understand how their government works and the kinds of things that legislators or other service people do in order to make government more effective for the people it's supposed to serve. And you can see that in all 3 collections. All 3 of these women, along with the rest of the Con-Con delegates, were working really hard to ensure that Montana had a revised constitution that better served the Montana people. Things like a clean environment is something that's specific to Montana's constitution, and no other constitution in the U.S., state constitution, has that phrase in their Bill of Rights. But Montanans, their Bill of Rights ensures them a clean and safe environment. Montana is one of the few states that has an equal rights amendment, or actually let me correct that. Montana is one of the states that has an equal rights amendment in its constitution, and that came from the 1972 convention. And Louise Cross, one of the women whose papers are on this table, she worked really hard on that. And Dorothy Eck, one of the women who served in the Con-Con, she worked really hard on the ERA amendment. Montana's Con-Con had 100 delegates, and 19 of them were women. And at that time, that's unprecedented because it's about 20% representation. And it's kind of significant too because this is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment being passed, which gave women in the U.S., not just at the state level, but in the U.S., the right to vote. And so 19 women from Montana served on the Con-Con, and this is the anniversary of the 19th Amendment. So it's just kind of fun. But it's important to remember that although we've had 100 years of women having the right to vote, that women have been doing a lot in politics and government well past the passing of the 19th Amendment. That was just one significant moment in women's history, and women's history related to politics and government. And so these women's letters and their collections are proof of that, how they took that right and they kept going with it. And they said, it's not enough for us to just have the right to vote. We also need to be actively involved in the political system. We need to be serving as legislators. We need to be serving on local government committees, county commissions, city council, etc. And they did that for the rest of their lives. And Cross was very involved in environmental politics. She was from eastern Montana, and so strip mining and coal mining were a big concern of hers, and she remained active in making sure that public lands were respected and that they were preserved. And Eck served in the legislature from 1980 to 2000. So she served 20 years in the Montana state legislature. And then Arlene Reichert, she served 1 term in the Montana legislature, and then she decided that she wanted to do other things, and because it was a bicameral body rather than a unicameral body, which she fought strongly for during the Con-Con, that it just wasn't quite for her. So she went on to do a lot with historic preservation in the Great Falls area, and actually founded a nonprofit that focuses specifically on historic preservation. And she was the driving force between preserving the Great Falls 10th Street Bridge. And she's still living in Great Falls. So the Dorothy Eck papers there are about 15 boxes, I want to say, 15 boxes of materials. And so it's not all correspondence. She also saved organizational records from the con, so resolutions, statements, the rules of the convention, that sort of thing. And she annotated some of them with her own notes. And then she also has materials related to specific topics that were of interest to her, including local government. She was very involved in the State Commission for Local Government, which started after the convention to kind of help local governments figure out how they could implement the things in the Constitution that were new and that were relevant to them on the local, the city, or the county level. But the correspondence makes up a good portion of the collection. And when Eck was involved in the con, she was on the Bill of Rights Committee, and so there's a lot of correspondence between her and other con delegates, specifically about things like right to know, and she also was involved in Indian education for all, so there are a few things in there like that. I really love this letter because it's from Leo Graybill, who was chairman of the con, and he writes to Dorothy, "My good friend, and that is how I consider you. Thanks for helping the Montana Constitutional Convention begin well. Your cooperation was vital to the good feeling and generous spirit that prevailed." And so she had a really great relationship with Leo Graybill. He was a really wonderful colleague of hers. And that was written before the con actually really started, when they were still in the kind of planning stages, when they were going to Helena and doing sessions on how this was going to work and how they were going to think about revising the Constitution. And then here's one from Jean Bowman. She was another woman who served as a con delegate. And she said, "Dear Dorothy, thanks for your letter. I share your concern that the convention not turn into a partisan effort. I may be naive, but I do think that the best way to avoid caucuses is to not attend them." And then she also refers to the idea of them being women in the con and what that means. "I don't like to be patted on the shoulder, ! Or called kiddo. That is the nickname I have acquired among some of the delegates here. Also, I think that we women must not give the impression that we are a block, as I think that will give the men even more suspicious or whatever they are of us. I seriously doubt that we would ever vote as a block on anything, but feel it is important not to let anyone assume that we will." And so already the women delegates are sort of conversing and writing letters and talking about what it's going to be like to serve as women. And they're recognizing that this is sort of a historically important moment for women and the challenges that they're going to face as women delegates. Here's another one from Louise Cross. "Please consider this a personal letter, though you may not receive the original copy. If you are like me, you are looking forward to being a member of the Constitutional Convention. You have received, no doubt, copies of letters from delegates who are interested in some of the leadership positions of the convention. It is my hope that at least a few of those positions, a vice president or a committee chairman or two, will go to some of the women delegates who comprise almost a fifth of the convention delegates." And so again, Louise Cross, in November 1971, before the convention officially starts, she's already referencing the fact that there's an unprecedented number of delegates serving on this con, as opposed to other state con-cons that were happening around the same time throughout the U.S. And she's also calling attention to the fact that women need to be part of the leadership. And Louise Cross was the only woman to serve as the chairman of an article committee, and she served on the Agriculture Committee, and she was the chairman for that. And that's why she was so important to getting the statement in the Bill of Rights about Montanans having the right to a clean and safe environment. She was the driving force behind that. And it was because she was a chairperson. There are so many great letters from women to these delegates. I love this one from Helen Lockwood, April 11th, 1972, because she did a telephone interview with Dorothy Eck, and she says, "Our opposing political philosophies may prevent my ever voting for you for a political office, but I am confident that the interests of our country will be uppermost in your mind as you serve in any political office. Sincerely, Helen. And so when we think about civil discourse and the lack of partisanship during the convention, I think that really says it so well. And Lockwood wasn't even a con delegate, she was just a constituent. But the fact that she sent Dorothy Eck a letter saying that she respected what she was doing even though she may not agree with her politics is a really good reminder for us today. And then here's one from Marjorie Jennings, and she is asking Dorothy Eck to support an equal rights guarantee in the new Constitution. And Marjorie's a member of the Missoula branch of the American Association of University Women. And she says that our association members believe that all citizens should have equal rights, regardless of race, color, sex, or national origin. And that's coming from Missoula, Montana. So these are some of the kinds of letters that you'll find in the Eck collection. A lot of them have to do with Equal Rights Amendment and the right to know and the right to privacy. And a few of them do have to do with Indian education for all, which were things that Dorothy Eck was very involved in getting into the Bill of Rights. So her collection is just so full of really interesting correspondence, and then a lot of information about her serving in a high office. She was the first woman to serve in a high office in the state of Montana. She was appointed by the Governor Tom Judge as the commissioner for the state and local government commission that happened after the convention. So there's a lot of material in her collection about that. So great papers and a really fascinating woman. Bob Brown and Dorothy Bradley, two of Montana's youngest state legislators, credit Dorothy Eck with encouraging them to go into politics. And they both speak very highly of her. So, especially Dorothy Bradley, who was also from Bozeman, like Dorothy Eck was, so they knew each other fairly well. But Bob Brown, who is a Republican and Dorothy Eck was a Democrat, she still encouraged him to run too. So, and both Dorothy Bradley and Bob Brown served in politics for a long time, and a lot of it was due to Dorothy Eck's encouragement. So then we have Louise Cross, and Louise Cross was from Glendive, Montana, so she was representing eastern Montana, and a lot of the correspondence in her collection focuses specifically on her work on the environment. I think her collection is really unique because she used to write home. She used to write letters home, not just to her family, but sort of to the entire community. Hi everyone from the capital city. I never dreamed time would go so fast. When I first came here in January, the 2 months seemed like such a long time, but here it is March, and we are going into our last 2 or 3 weeks, and then it is homeward bound. So I hope that all of you are getting along all right and not working too hard. I'll try to add a personal note to each, but if I don't, you'll know I ran out of time. Love to all, your delegate. And so I think that's a great example of someone serving in government who understands that they're doing it for the people they serve and not just for themselves. And so she wanted to keep people updated on what was going on and welcomed their feedback and their letters with proposals and suggestions and what they thought about certain articles and the Bill of Rights. And then this is a great one from Marie McDonald. Dear Madam, she's congratulating Cross on being elected to the CON. As a Montana woman, I take pride in your election to the Constitutional Convention. We are about 50% of the human race. Government affects each of us every bit as much as it does our men. But of the states which have held conventions recently, Montana's record of 19% feminine representation is by far the best. I'm wondering why we did better than other states. And I don't know if I can answer that question, and I don't know if Cross or any of the other delegates could answer that question, but it is really significant that Montana, especially being a Western state that many people think of as very conservative, had such a high percentage of female representation. But it's something that we can be proud of, and those women certainly worked really hard to make sure that women were well represented and they were given rights in the Constitution, and that they weren't thought of as all sort of homogenous, that all women are the same and they think the same and they vote the same and they are concerned about the same issues. We can see that they were all concerned with a variety of different issues that they knew their constituents were also concerned with. Here's another congratulations from Harriet Bagley. Dear Mrs. Cross, congratulations on your ConCon appointment. Knowing your zeal and ability, we know things will be well taken care of. Truthfully, I wouldn't want the job, but realize it would be a stimulating experience. Good luck. So not every woman wants to serve in politics, but every woman wants to be represented in politics. And then here's one that was sent during the convention. Dear Louise, just a note to let you know how proud of you we are. Thank you for sending the tapes. So many people commented on them. Also read the article in the BG about your speech to your committee. So, and our Democratic Women's Club luncheon was not too successful. Only about 20 were there. So just little notes from home, because this is from Glendive. Just keeping her apprised of what was going on in her hometown. And it's clear that she was sending them documentation of what was going on during the convention so they could all be involved. So Cross didn't actually run for the legislature after she served as a ConCon delegate, but she remained very active in local government politics. And she was actually the founder of the museum in Glendive and the first curator. So she was very concerned not only about environmental issues, but also the preservation of local history in the state. And then finally, the other collection that I had the pleasure of working on was Arlene Reichert's materials. And she was from Great Falls, and she really had a lot of information about things that were of interest to Great Falls constituents. She also served in the legislature in 1979, and she saved so much correspondence from that time, constituent correspondence. People writing and saying, please vote yes or no on certain bills. But her ConCon materials are really fascinating. Here's a note from Louise Cross to Arlene. Dear Arlene, sometimes a person's path crosses someone else's who proves to be intelligent, lovely, and charming. I have appreciated such a person, you, in the convention. Thank you for your support and encouragement. Kindest and personal regards, Louise. So there are a lot of little handwritten notes from the women delegates to each other. And they also had a lot of great back and forth with the men delegates as well. But when you're thinking about only 19 of them versus 81 of the men, it's really nice to see how they all interacted, even though they wouldn't necessarily agree with each other on everything. And here's one from Maynan Ellingson, who was the youngest ConCon delegate. And she just is writing to say, Dear Arlene, how are things going? I am so disheartened every time I see the Tribune. It seems that all there are is negative letters to the editor. No one seems to write anything positive over there. And this is when they're trying to get the Constitution ratified. But they stayed in touch long after the convention was over. And then here's Arlene Reichert, of the three collections, she has the most sort of like little cards and notes. And so they're really pretty as well as beautifully handwritten. And this is congratulating her on being a delegate. Dear Arlene, hurrah and congratulations. What a victory for the ladies. Best wishes, Loretta. So they got a lot of mail from other women in Montana thanking them for doing this, encouraging them, and then also at times commenting on their appearance. This is from Anne. Dear Arlene, Montana needs qualified women to win ConCon election. You have the ability for the job, but first you must win. Your biggest criticism is the high queenie hairdo. A professional style like KRTV Norma's is most talked about and acceptable. Many of the West Coast women over 25 are choosing shorter above the ears hairdos. You have our support and we'll do everything to see you win. But just a gentle comment on appearance about how she thinks. So, you know, sexism is not specific just to men. Women can be critical of someone's appearance too. This is from Norma at KRTV, the one with the shorter hairdo. Congratulations, Arlene, on winning a seat in the historic Constitutional Convention. I am very, very proud of you and know you will do an outstanding job. So, no comments on the hair. So these are just some of the really great little snippets that you find in archival collections, and particularly archival collections of politicians or people who serve in local government. You get to see the inside, you get to see what people thought of them, you get to see how they were working with people to accomplish things, to implement change, to try to maintain things such as the Equal Rights Amendment that they had fought really hard for and they weren't about to repeal. So there's so many other great letters. This is just a handful of some of the fun things that I've stumbled across as I was processing these papers. They are available for the public to look through. They haven't been scanned or made available online yet, but you can come to the Historical Society's Research Center. You can request to look at the collections and they will be brought to you, and you can actually leaf through the letters yourselves. In some cases, you know, they're still in the envelopes, so you actually get to pull them out of the envelope and unfold them. And that's one of the wonderful things about Montana, is that we have numerous museums and local historical societies, and of course we have our state historical society, which is funded by the taxpayers and the legislature every year. And so these materials are held in trust for the people of the state of Montana. They're your materials, and we keep them here to keep them safe, but they're here for you to use and research, and it helps ensure that we understand our history, we know our history, we have documentation of it, so that it doesn't go missing or that we don't forget about things. And so that's one of the great things about archives, is that you can come in and you can actually handle the physical materials. They're not under glass, and you can actually do the research, or you can just discover a letter. Maybe someone who wrote to one of these women is your grandmother or aunt or mom, and so being able to see that little bit of interaction in that historical context gives you better insight into what was going on in the state in 1972 and how it has influenced Montana government and women in government over the years. So I know that all of these women have been an inspiration to other women who've served in politics. And they're an inspiration to women who don't necessarily want to serve in politics, such as myself. But I feel more confident knowing that there were women like this working really hard to maintain my rights as a woman. So.